Hey there, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. On the show tonight,
no one said it was going to be easy. The fight still goes on.
Mayor Brandon Johnson doubles down on his progressive agenda. And more specifically, a look at what yesterday's election could mean for the Bring Chicago Home referendum.
Come, open, and ready to be gagged.
And the celebrity and ensemble cast of Steppenwolf's latest production, Purpose, tells audiences to be ready for something they've never seen before. And now to some of today's top stories. A senior city official who was in charge during the 2020 Little Village smokestack implosion could be serving as the city's buildings commissioner. Marlene Hopkins was the top official in the city's buildings department when it greenlit that botched implosion, resulting in a plume of dust wafting through the neighborhood in April that year, just as the COVID pandemic swept into the city. Mayor Brandon Johnson has nominated her to replace former Commissioner Matthew Bodette, who he fired last month, even though Mayor Johnson criticized Lori Lightfoot's administration for its role in the disaster during the 2023 campaign. The nomination must be confirmed by City Council, and there's more of this story on our website. And Chicago taxpayers will shell out more than $57 million to settle 3 police misconduct lawsuits. One of them involves a 2021 case where a car chase left a 15-year-old boy with a traumatic brain injury, unable to talk or walk. The settlement means the city pays $20 million and the city's insurance company pays another $25 million. In a separate case, the city will pay $5.5 million to a man who spent more than 22 years in prison after being framed by a disgraced former Chicago police detective. Mayor Brandon Johnson reacted to the settlements after today's city council meeting.
Still a lot of work to be done, no doubt about that. It also speaks to just the decades of negligence. Some of these things, as you know, predate my existence.
And for more on these cases as well, please visit our website. 21 alder people, along with dozens of community organizations, are calling on the city to replace Chicago's 60-day shelter eviction policy for new migrants with one that addresses shelter stays on a case-by-case basis.
The cost of this move, both the financial costs of increased ER visits and other costs associated with rising homelessness that will result in continued shelter evictions, and most importantly, the human cost to people who have already uprooted their families and lives from their countries of origin to seek refuge here, should be intolerable to all of us.
40th Ward Alderperson Andre Vasquez says he sent a letter asking the mayor to end shelter evictions and increase transparency into how the rolling evictions are being decided. Up next, recapping yesterday's key races and the ones still too close to call. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
A defiant Mayor Brandon Johnson vowed to keep pushing his big, bold agenda on Wednesday, one day after progressive Chicago Democrats appeared to suffer 2 big setbacks. Let's listen to what he told reporters after today's city council meeting.
My record of being able to compel and campaign and convince, there were some limitations to how I can engage in this moment. That was frustrating, but make no mistake about it. If anyone believes that one issue that we still have to address is going to cause me to put the brakes on my agenda, well, they missed the city council today, because we are moving forward with the $1.25 billion bonds deal that's going to invest in people. So guess what? Buckle up.
Buckle up, the man said. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with the latest on the aftermath of Tuesday's elections. Heather, proposal known as Bring Chicago Home, we've been talking about it a lot. Of course, it is trailing by about 22,000 votes, while Clayton Harris III faces a deficit of less than 10,000 votes to Eileen O'Neill Burke. and that, of course, is in the race for Cook County State's attorney. Where does the vote count stand right now?
So there is a universe of about 150,000 mail-in votes that were sent out by elections officials and that could be returned before April 2nd, as long as they were dropped off or postmarked before midnight Tuesday night. Now, typically in a given election since the pandemic, about 80 to 85% of those votes will come in. So there is technically plenty of votes for both Bring Chicago Home and Clayton Harris to make up those deficits, but we won't know until sometime tomorrow on Thursday when elections officials finish processing those ballots and validating those signatures and counting those votes. So we are all still in the waiting pattern where we were here yesterday at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and it's sort of the new world order as mail-in ballots have grown in popularity. We're going to have to get used to not knowing on election night. Election defeats often prompt politicians to sort of rethink their agenda, though. Any sign the mayor is reconsidering his approach beyond this defiant buckle-up tone?
There is not. The mayor believes that the city has a moral obligation to house the unhoused, and that he said several times that this is a racial equity issue. 70% of Chicagoans who are unhoused are Black. The majority of the rest of them are Latino. He says that the city must take action, and he seemed pretty frustrated with the low turnout yesterday and the number of Republicans sort of voting in this ballot referendum question. And he called the opposition, which was led by the business and real estate communities, cowardly. And he said that that drowned out the stories of Chicago families struggling to stay housed in a city that is becoming more expensive to live in, it seems, every day. This is not somebody who is sort of looking at these very close races and saying, man, I got to recalibrate. This is somebody who says maybe we didn't push just hard enough.
All right, and we're going to get into both sides of the Bring Chicago Home issue in just a bit with our next segment. He also told reporters, though, that his hands were tied in the fight for Bring Chicago Home. What did he mean by that?
That's right. Well, so the Chicago Ethics Board has cracked down in recent elections about city officials using their official offices and titles and city resources to campaign either for offices or for other partisan issues. So he said that there was a lot he couldn't do to sort of encourage people to vote in favor of Bring Chicago Home. Now, he certainly encouraged people to vote on Bring Chicago Home, but he didn't say which way really he would vote in sort of a campaign setting. He said he's the city's best gamer, he said. He wanted the ball, he didn't get it. He said he's ready to punch back now, and people should be waiting.
Okay, dying to know what that looks like. And even with a lot of votes left to count, clear one Cook County official, though, had a bad night. Heather, who's that?
Yeah, Iris Martinez lost not only her bid for re-election as Cook County Circuit Court clerk to Mariana Spiropoulos, but she also lost her position as 33rd Ward Democratic Committee person to Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez-Sanchez. Martinez and Rodriguez-Sanchez had really been sort of in this grudge match for control of the Northwest Side political machine. In addition, Graciela Guzman, an organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union, she's heading to the state Senate to replace Natalie Toro, a close associate and protege of Iris Martinez.
All right, good to know. Heather Sharon, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And coming up, what's next in the fight against homelessness as that controversial ballot measure we've been talking about appears headed for failure? With 20 city precincts and nearly 110,000 mail-in ballots still unaccounted, the measure known as Bring Chicago Home is still too close to call following Tuesday's election. Now, this is, of course, the measure that called for hiking the real estate transfer tax on property sales over $1 million. Supporters say the additional revenue would fund efforts to fight homelessness, but the close race could point to some disagreement among Chicagoans over how to support the city's unhoused. Joining us again are Corey Owens, a member of the Neighborhood Building Owners Alliance, and Alderman William Hall of the 6th Ward. Gentlemen, I know you talked about this on Monday before the election. I want to thank you for joining us again because we still don't know the status of this vote. Corey Owens, Owens, I want to start with you because we've heard Brandon Johnson, and we've been talking about it on the show, discuss the possibility of this loss here, not discouraging him from continuing his agenda. What is your takeaway from last night's vote right now?
I mean, I think, we're still waiting to see what it's going to be and how it's going to go. But, I think we're optimistic. But, anybody who calls it a win, I think that's is not the right terminology, because at the end of the day, we still have people in Chicago who need houses. We just need to figure out the way that is going to work best for the city of Chicago to be able to provide it. And that's what we want to do. I hope Brandon Johnson continues to fight for this and continues to try to fight to house the homeless in Chicago. That's what we want. And as housing providers, we want to be a part of that fight as well.
Alderman Hall, same question to you. What's your takeaway from the vote so far?
Well, so far, I say it simply as this. The right to vote did not happen after 1 March. Apartheid did not end simply after 1 March neither. And so what we will do is continue to march forward, organize, and figure out, again, it's all about what's fair. And I'm grateful to hear that, Corey, let's find the middle on this. But again, the idea that people sleeping on trains and kids not having a place to go, but bigger than that is affordable housing, which is what we need in neighborhoods that produces jobs and produces a fair share of this $16 billion economy. We'll figure it out.
Alderman Hall, do you think the Bring Chicago Home movement needs to consider making changes to your approach?
Well, I do think that this movement, again, at its core, is centered on equity and parity. And at the core of this is simply to say this, is that people need to pay their fair share. And what we want is investment in neighborhoods. That's what this was about. Essentially less than $1 million. It's cheaper to buy. And in neighborhoods where Black and brown people live, we're inviting, we're showing economic hospitality by saying, come and invest. The Chicago Empowerment Zones, these exempt you from taxes. We want Google to come build. We want Salesforce to come build. We want United Airlines to build something smaller in neighborhoods. Neighborhood growth matters. We've seen the exodus of Black population and brown population in the city of Chicago. So we want to bring people back to their neighborhoods and invest in neighborhoods.
Before the vote, it appeared that this movement seemed to have a lot of momentum and a lot of backing. Alderman, where do you think things might have fallen short?
Well, essentially this, it's one of the things that we forget is that every election matters. And primaries, sometimes people don't see it as a priority, which we will change that. But moreover, the will of the people was not defeated and is still not defeated. Again, we look at the civil rights movement. Did we stop when hoses were thrown on us? Did we stop when dogs tried to bite us? No. And this is merely an opportunity for us to come back and expand more voices. So many people did not know how important this movement was until yesterday. And sometimes we don't, it's not failure if you don't try again. And so we will continue to try to bring more people into the conversation of economic parity.
Corey Owens, is there anything about this referendum that you think would work?
Well, I think that the baseline of it is we need to find a basis of funding for homelessness, right? To create affordable housing, to be able to create affordable housing affordably, right? One of the biggest problems with development is specifically on the south and the west side of Chicago is to really do new development the way that it needs to be done. The economics don't work for it, right? And so I believe that in order to solve or to even begin to address the problem of housing and homelessness, we got to be able to solve the problem of how do we create more housing in areas where we're seeing vacant land or we're seeing a lot of boarded up buildings, and how do we then create a system that will bridge that economic gap so that you can make those housing affordably and also, sustainably.
So apparently the referendum wasn't enough to bring many voters to the ballot box, with voter turnout in Chicago only around 20%. What does that tell you about this issue and what people think of it?
Well, I don't know that if that's an issue-specific thing. I think historically in primaries we always see a lower voter turnout. I think that continuing to educate people and show them why they got to bring out and do their civic duty is going to be important. That in the future that everybody's voices, everybody has a chance to have their voice heard, and showing that. And it's not a matter of winning and losing. I'm not an adversary. He's not, Alderman Hall's not. I'm not adversarial to the mayor. We're all on the same team. We all want Chicago to be a better place. We just saw an issue and we have different point of views on how to solve that issue. And that's where, we got to kind of stop. Like, I'm not the enemy. We're not the villains. You guys aren't the villains because you want to provide homelessness. We're on the same team. We just got to be able to say, hey, it's okay for me to have a different point of view on how to solve this problem. You can have your point of view. Let's find something that works for the city of Chicago as a whole, because we want to get back and we want to get behind you on this as well. We want to bring our support to you.
Alderman Hall, not only did only 20% of registered voters show up for this, which can happen in a primary, as discussed, but the vote is still very close. What does that tell you? Because usually when there's a wide margin, the voters are giving you a very definitive answer. But what does it say to you that the vote is still too close to even call?
Well, what it says is that the will of the people will never be broken. What it says is that over 125,000 people believe in the idea of economic parity. This argument that we have in the public square sometimes gets mixed up. But one thing that's not confusing, one thing that is clear is that we don't want kids sleeping on trains. We don't want kids sleeping on couches and couch surfing. And so again, the economic formula that we've asked from day one is simply this: be fair. We have people that are making $40,000 to $50,000 a year, paying more taxes than billionaires. That's not right. And so the formula that we presented, again, similar to math. If we need to add and subtract, so what? We will figure out the way to get it done. And again, we're not attacking people that have worked hard and have accumulated wealth, and wealth has been transferred. But what we are saying is that this is a $16 billion economy that essentially can provide 1,000 jobs. No one on both sides disagrees on job creation. Nobody on both sides disagrees on housing for those in neighborhoods, especially Black and brown neighborhoods. As I said on Monday, Ward 16, chairwoman of the Black Caucus, Stephanie Coleman's ward, has 0% of anything over $1 million. That's not right. This problem did not happen when Mayor Johnson became mayor, so we can fix it over time, and together we can figure it out.
Obviously, it's something we all agree on. Homelessness is a problem to be solved, but like you said earlier, Corey, it's a difference of what that solution looks like for everyone. That's where we'll have to leave it. I'm sure there will be more to discuss as this vote comes down. Corey Owens and Alderman William Hall, thank you so much for joining us.
Corey.
Up next, a new play explores family, politics, and identity. But first, a look at the weather. By now, a handful of theatergoers have had the chance to see the latest production on Steppenwolf's stage, Purpose. The play about a Black political Illinois family is brand new. So new that the cast didn't even have a complete script when we sat down with them less than 2 weeks ago. But playwright, MacArthur genius, and two-time Pulitzer finalist Brandon Jacobs Jenkins says that's how the best productions are made. I sat down with him, director and two-time Tony winner Felicia Rashad, and the rest of the Purpose cast to find out more.
And if you all thought I was going to let my children step even a pinky toe in this house ever again, you all have another collective thing coming.
Excitement, excitement, excitement. Yes, this is a new work. And this is a new experience.
Yes.
As when we started this play, we had 50 pages, and we've been creeping up, but we don't have the end. Yes. It's very exciting.
Is that typical? Like when you're
No. But it is really exciting, and you know it puts us all on the same journey of discovery together. Yes. You know, all the actors and the director and even the playwright, because he's writing it as we're rehearsing it. Yeah. And he has idea in his head, but he's only now putting it on paper. So the first day of rehearsal when we showed up, we only had one scene. And then by the end of the first week, we had a second scene. And then by the third week, we had a third scene. And then yesterday, we kind of got an outline-ish of the fourth scene, so that it really puts us all on the same level and the same playing field as we do this all together.
No one is panicked. We are all extremely thrilled. And I would say, think about, you know, the cast list, the director, everyone said yes when there were only 50 pages. So that tells you something about him as a writer and the caliber of his work.
Okay. But the force with which you attack that, I thought was really good.
Ms. Rashad, what about this project and this production attracted you to it?
When I read this draft, which was the first act, I said, okay, yeah, I want to do this, because it wasn't finished, because there was so much about it that was unknown, yes. But I like the way he writes. I like the way he incorporates knowledge about so many different things within the context of a conversation that an actor is having with the audience, or that characters, I should say, are engaged in.
You know, I was invited by one of the premier acting ensembles of this country to make a play, and it would be ridiculous for me to come in here with a pre-baked, easy bake
Thank you.
dinner meal for them to reheat. You know, for me, the opportunity here is to collaborate with some extraordinary talents and artists, and I'm definitely of the school that, like, this is actually what theater has been since the beginning of time, right? Every great playwright was sort of tied to an acting ensemble, right? Shakespeare had his, what they called Lord Chamberlain's Men, you know, the Greeks were rehearsing for years before that play kind of emerged. Right. August Wilson and Lloyd Richards, they had a whole coterie of actors that they pulled upon to tell their stories. So for me, the truest form of playmaking is a deep collaboration with actors.
Wasn't there some story once about Rosa Parks personally hyping you up at some rally when you was just a kid?
Half true.
So you're a big deal. I mean, you're like living history.
History is by definition a dead thing.
Give us a sense. What's it been like to sort of produce something brand new that's never been done before?
The characters that you're playing, the play itself has your DNA in it. Mm-hmm. You know, you're saying things that the playwright is hearing and adjusting to and saying, oh, try this, or I like what you did there, so let's add that. So this is thrilling for us.
John, tell me about your character.
My character Nazareth comes from a very prominent black family in Chicago. His father is a pastor, and his brother is a senator, like very political family in the public eye. And he's an introvert, so he's sort of the black sheep of the family.
Ayana, tell me about your character. You play Aziza.
I think she represents, like Nazareth, a younger generation of thinkers, of feelers and shakers. She challenges, you know, the old heads, or for lack of a better term. So there's like this dichotomy of like, I'm so happy to be here, but there's so many things that are wrong here. How do I help? But do I be quiet?
Harry, your character, you play the patriarch of this family. Tell us about him. What's he going through?
This has really been quite an interesting thought experiment in dramatic form. What would the new world look like? What would this new millennium look like? What would they do in the AI time when a lot of things have replaced traditional values, when they've replaced traditional family, when gender roles have changed so significantly, perhaps seismically? The unsettling that would do in a man who's now a little bit past, well, or perhaps a lot past his prime.
I've only been out of incarceration for 2 weeks, and I cannot even begin to explain what that experience was like. I can't even begin to explain it to myself. But I can tell you now, it was some of the darkest hours of my life.
Glenn, tell us about your character, please. He's home from prison.
Yeah, I think he's on a journey of redemption. And I think he is trying to keep his family together and finding reentry somewhat, challenging. So I think for him, he's, trying to connect with his father, his mother, his wife, his children, and really the play questions whether folks are deserving of a second chance, what it costs to impart that second chance on someone, what it costs the family, what it costs he himself.
What do the two of you want people to take away from this production?
This idea, Miss Felicia would really like people to take away their coats and their wallets and their jackets and their phones, not leave anything in the theater.
Don't leave anything in the theater.
Don't lose nothing in the theater. But I think we're both invested in the kind of theater that's more of an occasion for group reflection, right? I feel like you know, if I felt like a play was about sending a message, I would just send you the message. Do you know what I mean? I don't think plays are about anything other than the people who show up and together kind of examine their values, their relationships to each other, to their community. And so I think we're just trying to build an occasion to reflect on family, think about how families are shaped by history, how families make history, to think about how, for some folks, family is a luxury that only goes back a few generations, and to think about, really examine the ways in which ideas of family and family values are shifting in sort of new directions and expansive directions. And inside of that expansion, maybe get a clear sense of where we are now versus where we used to be.
Y'all come see the show.
Come see the show.
And don't leave anything in the theater when you do go see the show. The production was extended even before opening night. It is slated to run through April 28th at Steppenwolf Theater. And that is our show tonight. Join us tomorrow at 5:30 and 10 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. A look at whether Donald Trump is gaining support in the Latino community. And we take you inside a dance studio promoting body inclusivity. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to recognize its 18 attorneys selected for the 2024 Super Lawyers List.